This is Philip Shaw from Dresden, Ontario. I'm here with my colleague, Dr. A.K. Anamal Haq from Dhaka, Bangladesh, for this month's East West. And today we're going to be talking about the Ukraine-Russia situation, the war that's going on, and the many other things that have been happening in this area. I know this has been going on for almost a couple of years now, where we've had this terrible conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And what was looked at as kind of a regional conflict initially, and a conflict between Russia looking at Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine has kind of turned into something different over a period of 2 years. And well, it's really not difficult to take sides in that the humanitarian cost of the war has been pretty terrible. There's been all kinds of geopolitical effects, whether that be with trade and sanctions and all kinds of things like that that have had a huge effect on the global economy. But also with the military events on the ground and all the terrible weapons that are being used, there's been a huge cost in human beings that we've lost in this conflict. And it's getting to the point now where it doesn't seem to be getting better. And, maybe it's time for something different because the human cost is getting so high. And like I'm talking to you from Canada, which is a NATO member, and it's pretty clear that NATO is supporting Ukraine against the aggression from Russia. And this escalation from Russia and NATO in defending Ukraine seems to be in a never-ending cycle. But regardless of that, regardless of the military strategy and what's going on, the human cost has been tremendous, and it is certainly affecting everybody on the ground. And you think at this point, maybe it might be time for a change going forward, just thinking about the human cost that's going on in that part of the world. It's been terrible. And of course, we had the events the night before last of the massacre at the Crocus Concert Hall. It's hard to tell how that's related to everything. It's still kind of being fleshed out as we speak here. But I'll throw it over to Dr. Haq now to take it from there, and maybe we can bring this issue out a little bit more.
Thank you, Phil. I think you have placed it correctly. This is an event that, if I remember, started East-West. It was one of our first episodes we started with it. And at that time, everyone thought that the war will be over a couple of days, probably. Now it is a couple of years. And the war has a tremendous cost to humanity, I would say. In a way, it not only affected the Ukrainians, the Russians, but almost everyone on the globe. The inflation on the globe is on the rise. If you look back carefully, it is probably costing even American politicians, because US politicians are also, people everywhere. Everywhere, countries and the governments are changing because of this high inflation that probably affecting the middle income and lower income people more than others. And that itself has been an issue globally. But the war has somehow, we don't see an end to it. And that's something that is bothering probably all of us, because it is, we should have a fresh look at it, because there was a negotiation done at one point in time with Turkey in the driving seat, but now there is no negotiator. Nobody is even thinking to go ahead and look at anything. So it's just left onto the fate, and we don't know what is going to happen. Meanwhile, I would like to point out that one of the strategists for US government, the Undersecretary, Victoria Nuland, she has resigned, and we're not sure what the cause of it. But there are speculations that she has resigned because the Biden government didn't want her to continue the post, and that is a signal that that this war, maybe US is trying to get out of it, and that is something that is also worrisome, because if you have financed such a war, which is costing about $130 billion from the US government, if that is so, you want to get out with a negotiated settlement. I think that is very important for all the countries. And you don't want to escalate the war anymore. In a way, you want to settle it down and you find a better solution, win-win solution for both parties. And I think this has been, particularly Ukraine has been the testing ground for many types of weapons from both NATO side and from the Russian side. And the more we see it, we see a particular strategy that is bugging me, which is now looks like the war is going to, around the world, the war is going to be different side. It is a drone war. It's a war that you fight from a long distance. And if you fight a long distance war, it's also making people vulnerable around the world because you don't know when what will come. So I think the trend and the message from the global political leaders are not very healthy, because anytime anything happens, any country can go another country and do this. And with the Security Council in stalemate, neither US can pass anything, neither Russia can pass anything. The security United Nations is also becoming handicapped and not particularly effective. So I think that is something also worrisome for people like us who are living in Bangladesh, because we all depend on these United Nations for a peaceful coexistence. We don't want a jungle slow, big countries go ahead and do something. So in order to protect each other, I think there should be a pause or at least an end to this. And the pause or end should be negotiated. That's how I feel strongly. More than almost 500,000 people died in this war. And if you take into account starting from 2014, when the Ukraine has an internal conflict with Donbass and other region, it could be more. And that is going to change the whole, the way Ukraine was before. If you read carefully, Ukraine was part of Soviet Union. Many Ukrainians led the Soviet Unions, and they were proud to be Soviet. I remember there are many foreign ministers of Soviet Union was when Bangladesh was in getting its independence. The Ukrainian ministers, probably one of the ministers was in Ukrainian. So Ukraine has been part of this, and I think that is one message that people should recognize, that we have friends and we become enemies, and it's all because of the political games. So I think looking at the humanitarian side, we should try to negotiate, and I think that is the biggest message that I can feel to give to the world, that look, it is enough is enough. We should start negotiating a good settlement between these two sides. Phil.
And the killing continues. That's a good thing. We can negotiate and get an end to this, but the killing continues. And from this side of the world, it's hard to imagine it stopping, because there's still a political will to fund it. And it wouldn't be popular for me to be sitting here in a NATO country and advocate some type of negotiation, because you're going to be labeled, well, you must be supporting Putin. And he's a terrible guy, and this, that, and the other thing. But the killing continues, and it's got to stop, and there's really no end to this. Now, mind you, there might be a sea change come November with the American election, because depending on how that goes, there probably is a big difference between the Mr. Trump, who's a Republican nominee, and President Biden with regard to how they treat Ukraine. And you can debate whether one is right or whether one's wrong. It's just probably significant. It's probably significant in how this conflict will be treated going forward from the American side. But keep in mind also, we had talked about this in earlier commentary. Anamel and I were together in the Maldives, and then I went on to Dubai after visiting Bangladesh this year. And there's Russian voices everywhere in Dubai and the Maldives, places that aren't sanctioned where they can actually go. And I'm not taking sides here, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and the killing just continues. And I think Anamel said about 500,000 people have been lost so far. Who's to say there can't be 500,000 more? And for what at the end of the day? I had my particular biases when this thing started, but it's not going to end very, very soon. And negotiation should take place at some level to bring an end to the loss of life and to go from there. So I'll throw it back to Dr. Hawk to wrap it up.
Yes, I think you are all right. You're right on the sense that yes, killing will continue. You never know when it will start somewhere else. But in order to settle it down as we speak today, I think the key is in a democratic society like Canada, US, and everywhere, this citizens has to take step, because I think citizens have been waiting for their government to solve it. It is time for them to also look carefully and voice it, because I think if you remember, Vietnam War ended because of the US students, citizens who actually was very vocal against it. Ukrainians are also right now suffering because they have a problem of recruiting new members. And that is one of their biggest problem that is happening. Now they're looking for mercenaries from France, from Canada, from US. They're asking for mercenaries to go there. The conflict, probably people will go because mercenaries are also from the Russian side. Let us not forget the Wagner group who were also there. So there are private military groups who are there. And these killing will become much more indiscriminate at that particular point of time, because I think with armies involved in it, is much more organized. But once the other groups are involved, and that's what I feel that is going to be much more dangerous in future. So my feeling is that we should all voice our concern to our political leadership and push them to look for a solution, because this was a war that has been, it looks like and I think I remember telling this, that 2 years ago, this is a proxy war. And if I remember telling that the war probably will end with part of it taken by the Russia. Looks like it is already there. Now, before Russia has already pointed out right now on the negotiation that they want a buffer range beyond what they occupy territory. So in other words, they're pushing more conditions and a condition that Ukraine will remain neutral. So if you look carefully, the more you wait for the negotiations and the more people will die, and the whole world will suffer, because Ukraine is a major producer of grains and other products. And that is also going to affect every one of us. So with that, thank you, Philip.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, we want it to end. A negotiated settlement would be good. And who knows, because even more dangerous things could happen in the future if it doesn't come to an end. So with that, we appreciate all our East-West viewers, and we'll talk again next month.